There are moments at a crime scene when everything appears to be over. The body is documented. The room is photographed. Evidence bags are sealed. Detectives step back, convinced they understand what happened. But history has shown, again and again, that justice can hinge on a single detail so small it nearly disappears into the background. A fiber clinging to fabric. A drop of blood no one thought to test. A mark dismissed as meaningless damage. And when those details are missed, the consequences can be devastating. Today's story isn't about one crime. It's about several. And what connects them is chilling. In each case, investigators almost walked away without noticing the one thing that changed everything. These weren't dramatic clues screaming for attention. They were quiet, subtle details, easy to overlook and deadly to ignore. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may never look at a crime scene the same way again. The truth is, crime scenes are chaotic by nature. They are emotionally charged environments where investigators must balance urgency with precision. Officers are under pressure to act quickly, to secure suspects, to reassure the public. But speed can be the enemy of accuracy. And sometimes, what appears to be insignificant is the very thing that exposes the truth. One of the most famous examples of a nearly missed detail comes from the case of Ted Bundy, one of the most studied serial killers in American history. For years, Bundy managed to evade capture while committing a series of brutal murders across multiple states in the 1970s. He was charming, educated, and seemingly unremarkable, traits that allowed him to blend in and avoid suspicion. But what finally connected him to his crimes wasn't a confession or eyewitness testimony. It was something far more subtle. During the investigation into the disappearance of Carol DeRonch in Utah, Bundy attempted to abduct her, but failed when she escaped. She provided police with a description of her attacker and his vehicle, but it wasn't enough to secure a conviction. The breakthrough came later, when investigators examined bite mark evidence found on the body of one of Bundy's victims. At the time, forensic odontology was still developing, and many questioned its reliability. But a forensic dentist noticed something unusual about the bite pattern: distinctive spacing and alignment that matched Bundy's teeth exactly. That detail almost wasn't pursued. Bite mark evidence was controversial, and many investigators were skeptical. But that single forensic observation became one of the strongest pieces of evidence linking Bundy to murder. Without it, he may have continued killing for years. Another haunting case where a critical detail was nearly overlooked involves the murder of Helle Crafts in 1986. Helle was a Danish flight attendant living in Connecticut with her husband, Richard Crafts, a commercial airline pilot. When Helle disappeared, Richard claimed she had returned to Denmark. At first, there was little reason to doubt him. No body was found. No obvious crime scene existed. But investigators noticed something odd. Richard had rented a wood chipper shortly after his wife vanished. That alone wasn't proof of murder, but it raised suspicion. Police began searching areas near the Housatonic River, where Richard had been seen operating the machine. What they found were tiny fragments, bone chips, human tissue, and traces of hair frozen into the ice. The most crucial detail was nearly dismissed as environmental debris. It was only because an investigator insisted on collecting what others thought was insignificant that forensic testing confirmed the remains were human and matched Helle Crafts. This became the first murder conviction in the United States without a complete body. A crime solved not by what was obvious, but by what almost went unnoticed. Sometimes the missed detail isn't physical evidence at all. Sometimes it's a pattern. In 2002, Washington, D.C. was gripped by fear during the Beltway sniper attacks. 10 people were killed over 3 weeks by John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo. Early in the investigation, law enforcement focused on a white van reportedly seen near one of the shooting scenes. Tips flooded in. Thousands of vans were searched. Meanwhile, the real killers moved freely in a modified blue Chevrolet Caprice. The crucial detail investigators almost missed was the shooting pattern itself. Early victims appeared random, but a closer look revealed they were targeted in public spaces where shooters could fire from concealed locations and escape quickly. A ballistics expert noticed that the angle of entry and shell casing patterns suggested a sniper firing from inside a vehicle. That observation shifted the entire investigation. Even more critical was a handwritten note found at one scene demanding money. At first, it was treated as a taunt, but the wording contained clues that eventually led police to connect the attacks to earlier murders in Alabama and Louisiana. Without that note, and without someone taking the time to analyze it carefully, the killings could have continued far longer. Another case that underscores the importance of minute details is the murder of Meredith Kercher in Perugia, Italy, in 2007. The case gained international attention, especially due to the wrongful conviction and later exoneration of Amanda Knox. But buried beneath the media frenzy was a detail investigators initially failed to prioritize: a bloody footprint. At first, the footprint was assumed to be irrelevant, possibly left by first responders or contamination. But later, forensic analysis showed it matched the shoe size and tread pattern of Rudy Gued, whose DNA was also found at the scene. That footprint became a crucial piece of evidence in Guedi's conviction. What makes this case especially instructive is how early assumptions nearly derailed the investigation. Investigators focused heavily on behavioral interpretations rather than physical evidence, leading to years of legal battles and public confusion. It wasn't until forensic details were re-examined, details once brushed aside, that the truth became clearer. Sometimes, a missed detail doesn't delay justice, it destroys it. The case of the Central Park Five is one of the most infamous examples of investigative failure in modern American history. In 1989, a jogger was brutally assaulted in Central Park, and 5 teenage boys were wrongfully convicted based largely on coerced confessions. At the time, forensic evidence existed that did not match any of the accused, but it was largely ignored. The crucial detail investigators almost missed was DNA. Semen found at the crime scene did not belong to any of the 5 suspects. But in an era when DNA analysis was still emerging, that discrepancy was not given the weight it deserved. It wasn't until years later, when Matias Reyes confessed and DNA testing confirmed his involvement, that the truth emerged. Those boys lost years of their lives because a scientific detail was overlooked in favor of a narrative that fit public pressure. It's a sobering reminder that ignoring evidence, no matter how inconvenient, can be just as damaging as missing it altogether. In some cases, the overlooked detail isn't discovered until decades later. In 1974, the murder of Arliss Perry occurred inside Stanford Memorial Church. She was found deceased at the altar, and suspicion fell on her husband. Despite extensive investigation, no one was charged. The case went cold. For over 40 years, the crime remained unsolved. Then, in 2018, advancements in DNA technology allowed investigators to re-examine preserved evidence. A sample taken from the crime scene decades earlier, once considered too degraded to test, was analyzed using modern techniques. The DNA did not match the husband. Instead, it matched a former Stanford security guard who had been present at the time. That microscopic detail, collected but not usable in the 1970s, finally spoke. the killer was identified, long after investigators had assumed the truth might never be known. What all of these cases reveal is a harsh reality. Crime scene investigation is not just about what you see. It's about what you refuse to ignore. Every fiber, every pattern, every inconsistency matters. The smallest detail can dismantle the biggest lie. Modern forensic science has evolved dramatically. Today, investigators use advanced DNA sequencing, digital forensics, geolocation data, and behavioral analysis tools unimaginable just a few decades ago. But technology alone doesn't solve crimes. It still takes human judgment, the willingness to question assumptions, to recheck evidence, to look twice at something everyone else walks past. And even now, details are still missed. In recent years, cold cases across the world have been reopened and solved thanks to genetic genealogy, a technique that traces familial DNA through public databases. In many of these cases, the evidence had been sitting in storage for decades. Not lost, not destroyed, just overlooked because the technology hadn't caught up yet. Which raises an unsettling question. How many cases remain unsolved, not because the truth is hidden, but because it was missed? Crime scenes don't lie, but they don't speak loudly either. They whisper, and only those who listen carefully hear the truth. So the next time you hear about a case that went cold, remember this. Somewhere in that evidence room, there may be a detail waiting, a mark, a pattern, a fragment, something investigators almost missed. And when it's finally found, it can change everything. If you found this story compelling, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more deep dive investigations into real crimes, forensic breakthroughs, and the hidden details that shape justice. Like this video if you want more content like this, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Because the truth is often hiding in plain sight, and we're here to help you find it. Stay curious, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.